3 years into my marriage to one of DC's most powerful heirs, I got pregnant. He stared at me, his jaw tight. I've never even touched you. How the hell are you pregnant? I looked down. You did. You were drunk on your birthday, you thought I was your first love. To make it up to me, the heir deposited $5 million into my account and started treating me like a queen. The day his first love came back to the States, I took off the fake baby bump, left a signed divorce agreement on the table, and skipped town. 6 months later, he caught me at a high-end club, flanked by 2 male models. He smirked. Well, Mrs. Ford. I've been looking all over for you. When I called Richard Ford to tell him I was pregnant, he was dead silent on the other end for a full 3 minutes. Where are you? City Hospital. When he saw the pregnancy test report, with my name clearly printed on it and the diagnosis listed as 6 weeks pregnant, Richard's face twisted. It took him a long moment to turn and look at me, his words seething. Nina Hayes? You're telling me you're pregnant? I've never even laid a hand on you. The nurse standing nearby shot me a shocked look, her eyes then moving to the top of Richard's head with a newfound sympathy. I lowered my eyes, biting my lip, my expression wounded. You did. On your birthday, you were drunk, you thought I was your first love. The nurse's sympathetic gaze instantly shifted back to me. Richard's dark eyes were heavy. After a long pause, he finally said, Since you're pregnant, you'll have the baby. The Ford family will take care of you. That night, my bank account was $5 million richer. It was from Richard. In his words, it was compensation. 3 years ago, Richard's family had forced him into an arranged marriage. He chose me, fresh out of college. Sweet, naive, easy to control, and most importantly, broke. In the 3 years I was married to him, I played my part perfectly. I never caused any trouble and did my best to be a good Mrs. Ford. We had the title of husband and wife, but not the reality. I always knew Richard was in love with someone else. That's why in 3 years of marriage, he never touched me. I absolutely loved this life. No job, 9 to 5 grind. I could just lie around at home and make money. Besides the $15,000 salary he paid me every month, Richard would also take me on frequent shopping sprees. It was supposedly for show, to keep up appearances for his family, but he never asked for the clothes, jewelry, or bags back. They were all genuinely mine. I was supposed to enjoy this life for another 2 years. But then, 2 weeks ago, Richard got wasted on his birthday and thought I was his first love. And that's what led to all this. I asked Richard not to tell the Ford family about the pregnancy. It's still early. Let's not get Grandpa and the others excited for nothing. We can tell them in 3 months, once things are more stable. Richard thought that made sense and agreed. After learning I was pregnant, Richard started coming back to our villa much more often. He used to come home 2 or 3 times a month now, it was 2 or 3 times a week. He was also a bit neurotic. He was terrified I'd bump or jostle my stomach. Every day, he'd stare at my flat belly and ask, "Do you think it's a boy or a girl?" I got so tired of him asking that I blurted out, "A boy." He sulked for the entire night. I found out later he wanted a girl. After 2 weeks of being treated like royalty, his first love returned. The day Claire Miller came back to the country, Richard paced back and forth in the villa for a long time. I asked, "Aren't you going to pick her up?" He glanced at me, hesitating. I gave him a gentle smile. "It's okay. The baby and I are very understanding." In the end, Richard went. The moment he was out the door, I bolted upstairs, grabbed my pre-packed suitcases, left a signed divorce agreement on the living room table, and made my escape. I flew to a city in the next state over that very night and hid out at a friend's place for 6 months. 6 months later, my friend finally convinced me to go out. I went to a high-end club and hired 2 cute male models for the evening. Just as I was enjoying the attention, with an arm around each of them and lost in their sweet nothings, the door to our private room was pushed open. The man standing there had a face as cold as ice. He watched me quietly for a moment, then a faint smirk touched his lips. "Well, Mrs. Ford. I've been looking all over for you." The room fell silent, the air growing thick with a chilling tension. Richard calmly sat down in the center of the sofa, lifted his chin toward me, and said in a low voice, "Come here." I cursed my traitorous legs. Even after 6 months, my instinct to obey Richard hadn't changed. He wrapped his arm around my waist, pulled me onto his lap, and placed a hand on my stomach. His tone was light. "Where's my son?" I hung my head, feeling incredibly guilty. I had a miscarriage." He chuckled softly. "A miscarriage? Or was there never a baby to begin with?" It was over. I was caught. Richard was right. I was never pregnant. I had faked the test results. The goal was to get a big payout from him. I wasn't planning on doing it so soon, but Claire was about to return. A few days before Richard's birthday, Claire had texted him. "Richard, I'm coming back to the States soon. I'll celebrate your birthday with you then." My deal with Richard was supposed to last 5 years. 5 years of a fake marriage, $15,000 a month. After 5 years, I would have walked away with almost $1 million. But with Claire back in the picture, our divorce was going to be fast-tracked. I did the math. I was out almost $300,000. Can you believe it, guys? So, I used his drunken night as an excuse to fake a pregnancy and squeeze some money out of him. He really was drunk that night. But he came home and passed out immediately. He didn't go on a drunken rampage or mistake me for Claire. I looked miserable. "Mr. Ford, I'm so sorry." He slowly tilted my chin up. "Nina, what you did is fraud. I could call the police." I made a last-ditch effort. "We can talk about this. I haven't spent a dime of that $5 million. I can give it all back to you." Mostly because I hadn't had time to spend it while I was busy hiding from him. "I don't want the money," he said, his eyes cold. "Then what do you want?" "I want my son." I was forced to go back to the villa with Richard. According to him, you can't unspill water. Or ungive money. Since he'd given it to me, there was no taking it back. Now, I had taken his money, so it was only right that I give him a son in return. I rolled my eyes. "What do you think I am, some kind of single-celled organism? I can just reproduce on my own?" He raised an eyebrow. "Speaking of which, after all these years of marriage, you still haven't fulfilled your wifely duties, have you?" I clutched my chest. "Richard Ford. We had an agreement. I'm not selling my body." He nodded. "We also didn't agree that you would try to blackmail me with a fake son, did we?" Damn it. It all blew up in my face. I was trapped. That night, when I got out of the shower, Richard was already lying in bed, shirtless. He lifted the covers, motioning for me to get in. What are we doing?" He flashed me a grin full of pearly white teeth. "Making a son." But, I hesitated. "I'm on my period." Richard's smile froze. The next second, he got out of bed, swept me up into his arms, and carried me over. His brow furrowed. "You're on your period and you're walking around barefoot on a cold floor? Aren't your cramps bad enough?" He gently placed me on the bed, then called for Mrs. Davis to make me some hot ginger tea with brown sugar. He didn't relax until he'd watched me drink the entire cup. I have terrible cramps and am always in pain for a few days every month. I just never thought Richard would remember something so small. After drinking the big cup of hot, sweet tea, the cramping did ease up quite a bit. I thanked him sincerely. He just snorted and turned his back to me as he lay down. "Are you sleeping here tonight?" I asked, confused. He just reached out a large hand, pulled me into his arms, and let his actions answer for him. The clock on the wall showed it was midnight, and Richard was clearly exhausted. I didn't say anything more. I carefully tucked the corner of the blanket around him and drifted off to sleep. This was the first time Richard and I had ever shared a bed. Surprisingly, I slept pretty well. When I woke up the next day, he had already left for work. After I had washed up and eaten breakfast, I was planning to just veg out in the small garden for the morning when the villa had a visitor. I knew her. It was Richard's first love, Claire Miller. She was here to see me. She had that classic girl next door look, with a gentle and sweet demeanor, and was wearing a white dress. Mrs. Davis obviously knew her, calling her Miss Claire. In the garden, I sat on the swing while she stood by the pond. "Miss Hayes, I'm Richard's first love. My name is Claire Miller. I came back to the States to take care of some unfinished business. I have late-stage stomach cancer. I'm dying." That last sentence shattered my composure. Another poor soul. I walked over to her and took her hand. "Miss Miller, you've misunderstood. Richard and I are married, but we're not in love. The person he loves has always been you." She looked at me, disbelieving. "Really? Really?" In the first year of my marriage to Richard, I discovered there was a room he never let anyone enter. Not even Mrs. Davis, who had been with the family for over a decade. One time, using the excuse of bringing him fruit, I snuck a peek inside. My God, it was filled with photos. Of one woman, from her school days to her professional life, covering every wall. I later learned that woman was Claire Miller. They met in high school and dated for 4 years in college. Richard had once said he would marry no one but her. But then Claire flew abroad alone, leaving Richard with nothing but a breakup note. For the first year after she left, Richard practically drowned himself in alcohol. He eventually pulled himself together over time, but his love for Claire never faded. The reason he chose to marry me out of all people was simply because I had my hair in a high ponytail and was wearing a white dress. It was Claire's favorite look. He chose me only because I looked like her. Claire was even more shocked to hear this. "He used you as my replacement? And you're not angry?" I smiled. "I don't love him, so why would I be angry? He pays me money, I give him my time. It's a fair trade." We were talking about nearly $1 million. Most people couldn't earn that in several generations of hard work. All I had to do was give up 5 years of my youth without selling my body. It was an amazing deal. Thinking of this, I put on a sad face. "But you came back early, so I might not get the full amount." She was smart and caught on immediately. "How much are you losing?" "Around 300,000. "I'll give it to you." My eyes instantly lit up. Now we're talking. That was just perfect. That evening, I personally cooked a huge dinner for Richard. When he came home, I stood at the door, eagerly took his coat, pulled out his chair, placed a medium-rare steak in front of him, and poured him half a glass of red wine. Richard raised an eyebrow slightly. "What's this all about?" I gestured for him to drink the wine, and he took a small sip. "Going to all this trouble, what are you trying to ask me?" I cleared my throat. "Mr. Ford, I'm cheating on you." In that instant, the villa became so quiet you could hear a pin drop. His fingers, gripping the wine glass, turned white as he pressed his lips into a thin line. This was terrifying. My legs felt so weak I could barely stand. "Mr. Ford, let's get a divorce," I finally managed to stammer out the main point of the evening. Richard's eyes darkened. After a long moment, he masked all his emotions, slowly finished the steak, and even drank the rest of the wine. Then he grabbed my hand and dragged me, irresistibly, back to the second-floor bedroom. He threw me onto the sofa, loosened the buttons at his collar, and his voice was heavy. "So for 300,000, you sold me to Claire Miller?" My breath hitched. Damn it. The bastard knew everything. Of course, he did. He was the master of this house, after all. He must have eyes and ears everywhere. Oh my God. Does that mean he knows about all the times I badmouthed him behind his back? Whatever, that wasn't important right now. I sat up. "Well, since you already know, I'll drop the act. Miss Miller is back. Us getting a divorce is exactly what you want, isn't it? A vein pulsed in his forehead. Nina, why do you think I went to so much trouble to find you and bring you back? Isn't it because I faked a pregnancy to trick you, and you couldn't let it go? I muttered under my breath. In a flash of insight, an impossible possibility struck me. Richard, you don't actually like me, do you? The lights weren't on in the room. The night was like water, with moonlight flooding the entire space. Half of Richard's face was hidden in shadow, and I couldn't see his expression clearly. But his eyes shone with a strange, scorching light that was about to drown me. I forced myself to look away, my tone a little cool. We agreed at the beginning that neither of us could develop real feelings. It felt like a century passed before I finally heard him let out a cold laugh, a sound that sent a shiver down my spine in the dark room. You're overthinking it. It's just that our agreement was for 5 years. That's what I promised my grandfather. We'll talk about divorce in 5 years, when I've fully taken over the company. After that, Richard disappeared for a long time. Claire never came to see me again. I went back to being the enviable Mrs. Ford in everyone's eyes. My period was approaching, and Mrs. Davis had already prepared a pot of hot ginger tea with brown sugar and left it on the table. I smiled my thanks to her and drank a large cup in one go. Mrs. Davis looked like she wanted to say something, glancing several times at Richard's study, but in the end, she said nothing. Richard never took me out shopping, strolling, or sea fishing again. He suddenly seemed to become incredibly busy, not coming home for months at a time. He was deliberately avoiding me. Ever since I told him that day that no one was allowed to develop real feelings. That was fine, too. It was all fake anyway. Catching feelings would only mean losing everything. But it was strange. The brown sugar was sweet, but in my mouth, it tasted bitter. Richard's birthday was coming up again. Time flies. It had been almost a year since his last birthday, when I lied to him about being pregnant. This year, the party was being organized by his grandfather. A lot of people were invited to a banquet at one of the Ford family's estates. On the night of the party, Richard took me to a private boutique to pick out a dress and jewelry. The owner was a beautiful blonde woman who spoke fluent Chinese. "What style are you looking for?" she asked with a smile as she measured my bust. I thought for a moment. Something dignified and elegant. After all, I was Mrs. Ford now. I had to be sophisticated and graceful, and not embarrass Richard. But the woman looked me up and down a few times and smiled knowingly. "It's Richard's birthday today. How about a different style?" When I came out wearing the red dress, Richard was on the phone by the window. When he hung up and turned to look at me, a clear flash of astonishment crossed his face. I looked at the woman in the mirror. The dress was as red as fire, and my hair, piled high, revealed a slender, fair neck. My waist was narrow, my legs long and shapely, and there was a subtle, alluring hint of cleavage. I had never seen myself look so breathtakingly beautiful. But the slit in the dress went almost all the way up to my thigh. I felt a little uneasy. Maybe I should change? He didn't say anything, just picked a ruby necklace from the nearby jewelry selection. He walked behind me and fastened the necklace himself. "No need," he said calmly. "This is perfect." The gemstone was brilliant and dazzling. And his fingertips accidentally brushed against my neck, sending an unexpected shiver through me. It tickled. When I walked in on Richard's arm, all eyes turned to us. After more than 3 years with him, I was used to this kind of attention. Only this time, it wasn't just the women's stares, but also those of all sorts of men. Didn't they say Miss Miller was back? Why is she still here? I thought Mr. Ford would have kicked her to the curb without a second thought. Well, it's been 3 years. You'd get attached to a dog in that time. I had heard things like this countless times over the past 3 years. I thought I had long since stopped caring, but an unidentifiable emotion still churned in my heart. I tightened my grip on my wine glass and told myself to let it go. What they were saying was the truth. I had endured it for so many years, what was one more? One more year, and I could divorce Richard, take my $1 million, and go with my mom to a place where no one knew us to live out our lives. Mrs. Ford. I turned to meet a man's smiling eyes. I recognized him. He was Richard's sworn enemy, Harrison Vance. He smiled and clinked his glass against mine. You get more beautiful every time I see you. I smiled and thanked him. The next second, he took the jacket from his arm and handed it to me. But, at an event like this, one should still mind their appearance. It was only then that I realized how many eyes were fixed on my exposed shoulders, back, and thighs. Most of them were men, their gazes explicit and suggestive. I frowned, displeased. Before I could say anything, a large hand rested on my waist, and Richard was standing beside me. He adjusted the necklace on my chest, his voice not loud, but clear enough for everyone present to hear. My wife can wear whatever she wants. That's her freedom. Harrison smiled. I was just offering a kind reminder. After all, I'm not the only one here who thinks so. Richard scanned the room, and those people quickly averted their gazes. When titans clash, the little fish don't want to get caught in the crossfire. Richard said, "It's the 21st century. Does Mr. Vance still believe that women dress to please men?" Harrison shrugged. I never said that. Richard smiled slightly. Then what the hell are you telling my wife to be mindful of? She can wear whatever she wants. You think you're worthy of judging a member of the Ford family? The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Harrison, having been publicly humiliated, wanted to say more. But Richard had already taken my hand and turned away. Perhaps Mr. Vance should learn how to respect people before he tries to lecture others. Richard led me away from the crowd to a quiet balcony on the second floor. He sat down, frowning and silent. The night breeze was a bit chilly, and I hugged my arms. He took off his jacket and draped it over me. I pressed my lips together. So you also think this dress is too revealing? A vein throbbed in Richard's forehead. After a long moment, he said, or maybe you're just cold. Right. He was the one who picked this dress, wasn't he? Why did you pick this one for me? It looks good. But it's so revealing, isn't it? They all thought so. Richard turned his head, leaning against the railing, his eyes cast down to look at me. I don't think so. You look beautiful in that dress. Very sexy. A flower is meant to bloom. If someone picks it, it's the person who picked the flower who isn't good enough. The flower itself is blameless. A long, long time ago, my mom, who loved to dance, would always put on her beautiful dance dresses and go out to dance in the square after dinner. Gossip spread through the neighborhood, calling her promiscuous, wondering who she was trying to seduce by dressing like that every day. My dad found out about it. To this day, I still remember his words. Dressing like that, isn't she just asking to be messed with? From that day on, I threw away all the pretty dresses in my closet. And now, someone was telling me with conviction. The flower is blameless. In that moment, as if bewitched, I took a step forward and looked up at him. Richard, is Claire your flower? His Adam's apple bobbed twice. After a long time, he said, she used to be. And now? Before he could answer, possessed by some impulse, I stood on my toes and kissed his lips. I must have been drunk. I found out that night that the time Richard was gone was spent accompanying Claire abroad for medical treatment. He had used a lot of connections and resources, only to find out it was a big mix-up. There was indeed a woman with late-stage stomach cancer, also named Claire Miller. But it wasn't this Claire Miller. Before returning to the country, Claire had said, "You've been running around from my illness for so long, everyone must think you love me very much." Claire's regret was wanting to go on a round-the-world trip with Richard. It was something they had once promised each other. Facing death makes you nostalgic for the good old days. But Richard refused. So he found the best doctors and arranged the best treatment. We were over the moment you left me without a word 4 years ago. Back then, Claire had chosen a better future over Richard. Her choice wasn't wrong, as it turned out she did do well for herself abroad. But no one waits in the same place for someone forever. A missed chance is a missed chance. In 4 years of marriage, strictly speaking, last night was the first kiss between me and Richard. I couldn't sleep all night, while he got up bright and early the next day to go to work. I thought it was just my own turmoil. But a few days later, Richard handed me a key. "What's this?" He touched the bridge of his nose and looked away, uncomfortable. "I got you a shop." I never expected that the shop Richard got for me was a dog cafe. Standing at the entrance, looking at the 2-story, spacious dog cafe, I was stunned. "For me?" I asked, incredulous. He covered his nose. "You said you were bored at home. This is to keep you busy." I invited him in. "Want to come inside and play?" He shook his head. "I'll pass. You go ahead." The cafe had a wide variety of dogs. 2 of the border collies were especially smart and friendly, rubbing against my legs. I loved them. But I didn't know that Richard was allergic to dog fur. When I rushed to the hospital, he had already finished 2 4 drips. But the red rash on his neck hadn't completely faded. I was worried, and my tone became urgent. "You know you're allergic to dog fur, so why did you get a pet cafe?" He scoffed. "It's just a little dog fur." His voice was hoarse and still, just a little dog fur, such a proud man. I knew this guy was all bark and no bite, soft on the inside. I didn't bother arguing with him and diligently took care of him at the hospital until late at night. Exhausted, I dozed off on the sofa. In a half-dreaming state, it felt like Richard carried me to the hospital bed to sleep. "Because I wanted to make you happy. I think Richard likes me. Why else would he give me a dog cafe?" While I was lost in the joy of petting dogs, Richard took his annual leave and brought me on a trip to Aspen. At first, I didn't know why, until he took me to the largest outdoor ski resort there. I hesitated. "I'm scared of dying." He grabbed my hand. "What's there to be afraid of? I'm here." The first time I stood on a ski slope, my legs were trembling with fear. Richard comforted me from the side. "Don't worry. Give me your hand. I won't let you fall." I don't know what possessed me, but I believed him, gave him my hand, and then promptly fell flat on my butt. I was so angry I started cursing. "Damn it, Richard. Are you trying to kill me?" He burst out laughing. "You want to learn to ski, how can you not fall?" After scraping my knees countless times, I finally experienced the wind whistling past my ears and the freedom of weaving through the trees. Standing at the peak of the mountain, I gazed at the dreamlike world as the sunset touched the summit. Snowy mountains, sunset, evening breeze, it was free and romantic. I turned to the person beside me. "Richard, why did you teach me to ski?" He reached out and patted my helmet. "Weren't you the one who said it?" I remembered, in the first year of our marriage, to compensate me, Richard had once asked me what I wanted. I had cautiously said I wanted to get a dog. He had frowned, his whole body radiating resistance. "Pick something else." But at the time, all I wanted was a dog, so I randomly pointed to a magazine on the table. "Then let's learn to ski." I never thought he would remember something I said so casually. A strong warmth spread through me. I suppressed the flutter in my heart and skied down the mountain. Life could be dull, but when you start moving, there will always be wind. Because of Richard, I fell in love with skiing. And because of skiing, I fell in love with Richard. Business at the dog cafe wasn't great, so I invited some influencers to check it out and boost sales. The results were surprisingly good. I started going to the cafe every day like it was an 8 a.m. class. Richard was a little displeased. "You can just hire someone to manage it. Don't you get tired going every day?" I reached out and pinched his cheek. "You don't get it. This is what you call a labor of love." His face darkened, and he reflexively tried to grab my waist. "Nina Hayes. You're getting bolder." I giggled, spun around, and ran off quickly. In the kitchen, Mrs. Davis covered her mouth and laughed. Richard and I both knew we liked each other. It was an unspoken understanding. This was nice, too. I thought I had at least another 6 months of this life, but then, that person got out of prison. He stood at the door of the dog cafe demanding the staff let him in, surrounded by a crowd of bloggers and reporters. They were filming him with their phones and cameras. The staff didn't dare open the door, and the dogs inside were barking at him relentlessly. He kept shouting my name, his mouth spewing filth and curses. I'm her father. So what if she's Mrs. Ford? Didn't she come from between my legs? That bitch, sending me to prison. I'll settle this score with her. I raised her. Shouldn't she be taking care of me in my old age? You dare keep the door closed? I'll have her fire all you little bitches later. And you animals, I'll kill every last one of you later. My fingers curled into fists. Why was he out early, and how did he know I opened a shop here? Who was helping him? Was this person targeting me or Richard? Before I could figure it out, someone sharp-eyed spotted me. Mrs. Ford. A huge crowd instantly rushed toward me. Leading them was the father I had personally sent to prison. The moment he saw me, his demeanor changed completely. He started wiping away tears. Nina, my dear. I've been looking everywhere for you. Daddy was wrong. I'll never hit your mother again. Can you tell me where she is, please? I frowned. What do you want with her? She's my wife. Of course I have to find her. I bit my lower lip hard. You know she's your wife? Did you think about that when you beat her so badly she got a concussion? A wave of murmurs went through the crowd, and George's face instantly darkened. But, as if wary of something, he still managed to squeeze out a couple of tears. It was all my fault, Nina. Please just tell me where your mom is. I truly know I was wrong, and I really miss her. With that, he reached out to grab my hand. I was disgusted and instinctively pulled away. Unexpectedly, he used the momentum to roll to the side. To an outsider, it looked like I had pushed him. Oh, Nina. I'm still your father, how could you lay a hand on me? The crowd started whispering again. Most of it was about how unfilial I was, hitting my own father, having no manners. The reporters' cameras and bloggers' phones were shoved in my face, asking why I sent my own father to prison, why I didn't care for him, why I was so heartless. My nails dug deep into my palms, and even breathing became difficult. George started to get up again. Nina, I really... Before he could finish, a long, strong arm pulled me into a warm embrace. In an instant, bodyguards created a perimeter several feet around us. I looked up and met Richard's concerned eyes. My nose tingled, and I felt a rush of emotion. My mother was known as the beauty of our town. She was gorgeous, loved to dance, and had taught herself ballet for 10 years. Her looks and posture were top-notch in our town. Before she was even of marrying age, suitors were practically breaking down my grandfather's door. But my mother chose none of them. She chose a young man who managed props in their craft guild, my father, George. My grandfather always disapproved of the match, but my mother insisted, and in the end, he couldn't change her mind. In the second year of their marriage, I was born. I was very happy then, with the love of my parents and the doting affection of my grandparents. But my grandfather's health was poor, and he passed away when I was 4. The next year, my grandmother passed away too. My father was still good to my mother back then. He was thoughtful, comforting her and helping her get through that difficult time. When I was 10, we moved from the town to the city, renting a small second-floor apartment of about 500 square feet. My mother wanted to get a job to help share my father's burden, but he wouldn't let her. He said, "Your job is to stay at home and be beautiful. I'll handle the money." At first, I didn't understand why. Later, I learned. When a flower is too beautiful, the owner doesn't trust leaving it on the balcony. He only wants it in his room, for his own private appreciation. But my mother wasn't a flower, she was a person. She began to find my father's form of house arrest unbearable. After fighting and arguing, my father finally agreed to let her work. My mother became a dance teacher at an elementary school and also found a job as a lead dancer for a group in the park. During that time, she would hum songs as she cooked dinner after work. But most people can't stand to see others happy. The neighbors often gossiped about my mother behind her back, saying that dressed like that, who knows what she was doing outside. It was just a form-fitting dance leotard, perfectly normal clothing, but in their eyes, it was an invitation. Unable to bear such talk, my father had an unprecedented fight with my mother. That was the first time my father hit my mother. His eyes were bloodshot as he whipped her face repeatedly with a belt. Dressing like that, aren't you just asking to be messed with? I hid behind the sofa, covering my mouth, unable to cry out. My mother, crying, said to me, "Nina, go to your room. Don't look." From that day on, my father became like a different person. That's when I learned he had a violent streak. In the second semester of 8th grade, I came home from school to the strong smell of alcohol. The light was on in my mother's room, and I could hear intermittent groans. I pushed the door open. My mother was curled up in a corner, covered in blood, barely conscious. I cried, panicked, and not knowing what to do. Her head was covered in blood. The window was broken. I figured George had smashed her head against it. Every time he was drunk, he used it as an excuse to be even more violent. I heard the toilet flush in the bathroom. He emerged from the darkness, unbuckling the belt from his waist, and looked at me with a chilling smile. "Nina's home?" Just in time. As the belt came down, my mother shielded me with her back. In the chaos, I fumbled under the bed for an iron rod I had bought online. I swung it and hit George hard. He was knocked unconscious, not dead. And I took the opportunity to call the police. George had beaten my mother so severely she suffered a concussion and a mental breakdown. Because I testified that he was indeed abusive, and we had video recordings at home, he was sentenced to 10 years in prison. I was 15 years old that year, in the 9th grade. After George was sent away, all his relatives wanted nothing to do with us. Instead, it was my uncle who supported me until I graduated from high school. My aunt was a good person too, tirelessly caring for my mentally fragile mother for 3 years. After I graduated from high school, I planned to go away for college, but my uncle wouldn't let me. "With grades like yours, it would be a shame not to go to college. You go and study with peace of mind. Your aunt and I will take care of your mom." For 4 years of college, I didn't use a penny of the money my uncle gave me. I paid my way through with part-time jobs and scholarships. After graduating, while looking for a job, I was spotted by Richard Ford. I was desperate for money. I had to pay for my mother's future medical treatments and repay the kindness and money my uncle's family had given me. So, I agreed to 5 years with him. Richard, sometimes I really hate myself. If it weren't for me, my mom wouldn't have had to put up with him for so many years. I knew. I always knew. After every beating, my mom would sit by my bed, crying as she watched me, sometimes all night. She probably wanted out a long time ago, but for my sake, she had to endure it. Because if she left, the one getting beaten black and blue by my dad would have been me. My hand was gripped tightly. Richard, his eyes full of heartache, pulled me into his arms. How did you get through all that?" he asked, his lips tight, his hands trembling. The hand on my waist tightened, holding me firmly. "I'm here now. I'll never let you suffer another grievance again. Nina, don't cry. It's killing me." His hot tears fell on my neck, one after another, scalding their way into my heart. Richard didn't give George a chance. He had some people deliberately provoke George while he was drunk, which easily enraged him. Then, with lightning speed, he had him sent back to prison and asked a friend of his in the prison to take good care of him. The person behind it all was also found, Harrison Vance. He had arranged for George's early release, telling him to play the victim so he could use the negative press to suppress the Ford Corporation. When the stock fluctuated and chaos erupted within Ford Corp, he could swoop in and reap the benefits. Richard didn't give him the opportunity. He directly leaked the news of Harrison's affairs with his mistresses to his mother-in-law's family, complete with scandalous, explicit photos. The Vance family exploded. Their stock plummeted, and Richard bought up all of the Vance family's loose shares. Harrison had been slacking off for years, living off his family's wealth, and had sold off many of his shares. Richard bought them back at a high price, accumulating nearly 30% of the shares. At the next board meeting, he held veto power. Isn't it a huge loss to spend so much money on those junk stocks? I asked, confused. Richard looked up from his computer, then reached out and pulled me into his lap. He placed a light kiss on the corner of my mouth. Not a loss. Getting revenge for you is worth any price. I heard that at the next Vance board meeting, Richard arrived late and sat in a side seat. The look on Harrison's face was worse than if he'd eaten a pile of crap. I went to the hospital for another test. The reason was that my period was a month and a half late, and I had been feeling nauseous and vomiting frequently. It was too much like being pregnant. I couldn't be careless. After half an hour of anxiously waiting, the results came back: elevated HCG, 5 weeks pregnant. I excitedly ran to find Richard with the report. He stared at it for a long time, laughing and crying, then gently touched my still flat stomach, a little neurotic. Baby, do me a solid. No mini MES. I punched him in the face. Richard. This man was desperate for a daughter. When my 5-year contract with Richard ended, he gifted me a trip around the world. We chased the northern lights in Iceland, watched the most beautiful sunset in Bali, rode in the biggest, most beautiful hot air balloon in Turkey, crossed the Sahara Desert, and experienced the romance and freedom of Paris. On a beach in California, we ran into Claire Miller. She was holding a child in her arms, with a handsome, blonde man standing beside her. Richard and I both tacitly agreed not to go over and say hello. Once you find peace, you move forward. We were all lucky. We didn't get stuck rotting in the past and in dreams. Epilogue 1. Today, the kindergarten teacher sent me a message. I thought that little rascal, Chloe, had gotten into trouble at school again. But it turned out the teacher was just giving me and Richard a heads up. A heads up about what? When Chloe got home, I found out. She had been asked a question by the teacher today. What did the teacher ask you? The teacher asked us what our mommy and daddy liked to do at home. I suddenly had a very bad feeling. And how did you answer? Chloe lifted her chin. I said, Daddy's favorite thing to do at home is spank mommy's butt, especially when I'm sleeping. I almost coughed up a lung. I roared at the certain someone cooking in the kitchen. Richard Ford. I told you to turn off the lights. Oh my God, just give me a block of tofu to bang my head against. Epilogue 2. For Chloe's first birthday, the Ford family threw a family banquet to celebrate. I don't know who she gets her personality from, but the moment she walked in, she threw herself into Grandpa Ford's arms. Grandpa, Grandpa. Her sweet, milky voice made Grandpa Ford beam with joy, and he immediately gave her a huge red envelope. A villa. I shot Richard a look. Aren't you going to stop this? Isn't this too much? But Grandpa Ford thought I was unhappy about it. After dinner, he called me into the study and gave me an envelope. I opened it. Inside was a key. The old man cleared his throat. You get one, too. That's really not what I meant. Grandpa. Epilogue 3. Chloe was 7, and on her first day of first grade, she got into a fight at school. When she came home, I asked her sternly why. She pouted, defiant. He said his mom was the prettiest. I didn't agree, so I showed him your picture. That little jerk threw the picture on the ground and stepped on it. My mouth twitched. And then you beat him up? Chloe snorted, looking exactly like her father. I did. Richard raised an eyebrow from the side. Did you win? Chloe puffed out her chest. Of course I won. Not only did she win, she sent the kid to the hospital. The next day, I dragged Richard to their house to apologize. On the way back, he kept muttering, "She really isn't as pretty as my wife." Epilogue 4. After George went to prison, Richard arranged for my mother to be treated at the best hospital abroad. With the doctor's care and therapy, my mother's condition improved significantly. Sometimes she could even say my name and knew who she was. I asked her to live with me, but she refused. Despite my repeated pleas, my mother returned to our small town and bought a house with a yard next to my uncle's. I gave my uncle a debit card. He refused to take it, insisting he couldn't. After much persuasion, he finally accepted. His eyes were full of tears. "When I was taking care of your mom, I never expected anything in return. Your grandparents are gone. I'm her only brother and your only uncle. It's my duty to take care of you both." My eyes reddened. "And it's my duty to take care of you both in your old age." Under the care of my uncle and aunt, my mother's recovery continued to improve. When I went home for New Year's Eve this year, she even personally cooked me a dish of braised pork ribs. I ate every last bite, tears streaming down my face. It was my favorite dish from my childhood. I thought I would never taste it again. Richard squeezed my hand. "It's all in the past." Outside the window, fireworks exploded, illuminating the entire night sky. That's right. It's all in the past. We will be healed by time, achieve our own salvation, and climb out of the mud and misery to become better versions of ourselves. I wiped away my tears, stood up, and raised my glass. Happy New Year. Out with the old, in with the new, year after year.